discussion on, I know we'll have a long discussion on the um, DAT project there on Kent.
And Webster.
I don't think it's going to be that long.
But we'll see. In any event, shall we do the first case?
I'll turn it, well, let's see, is there anyone else who has some public comment?
Actually, if you give me a
Hi,
minute,
Stan.
I went by the new aesthetic salon at the corner of Cypress and Route 9, which has its signage up. And I noticed that there are three uplights extending 2 or 3 feet from the facade, connected by a very kind of ugly conduit. And I thought, oh, that doesn't look good. But I went back and looked at a Google Street photo, and those were there when Ace Tickets was there. So I don't know if we have any ability to ask them to do something different. I don't know if their sign has any lighting, but they're very unattractive. But
Becca, do you remember whether that sign is illuminated? I think.
Yes, the sign is illuminated.
so they're not done yet. They're still working on the inside.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll take them down, but I think the sign's illuminated. They should be asked to take those down.
Okay.
They look like they're just bare floodlights also.
So
So
I'll just drop by and I'll ask them if they can, when they're open, whether they can take those down.
okay.
Yeah, especially if they're aesthetic.
Right.
Is that what they say? What are
Yes,
they?
aesthetic care or something like that.
Yeah.
I will say,
The other thing
I thought it
is-
came out well. It does look nice.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You may have noticed at 138 Harvard Street, probably haven't noticed, but Bright Horizons, we got a complaint because they've had black plastic on the inside of their fence to obscure the vision of the children playing in the yard, probably for safety reasons. But they've now put a blue scrim plastic on the outside of the fence, all along the entire fence, which says Bright Horizons. And so they have been notified that they have to, that is unapproved, and they would have to take it down and apply. Of course, I could tell them right away that that would not be approved like it is proposed now. So,
They do have their logo on the building, don't they?
yeah.
Yeah.
But this says Bright Horizon about 10, 15 times
Yeah,
across
I saw that.
this thing, so. Okay, anyone else for public comment? Mark is in the waiting room, Becca.
Yeah, so just admitted him.
I
He-
hate
he just joined.
when people did that to me, so I'm sorry. I'm sure you admitted him. Okay, go ahead, Becca.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The first case tonight is 133 Buckminster Road, and this is a continued case of a single-family home located in an S10 district in the Fisher Hill neighborhood north of Route 9. So currently there is a detached two-car garage, which is located at the rear northeast corner of the lot, and this proposal is to demolish that garage to build an attached garage near the house that will be attached via an existing deck. So the proposal also includes a roof deck and some changes to the driveway. When the board heard this case in March 27, 2025, the board expressed several concerns about the proposed garage and the impact on the streetscape. One of the concerns was the oversized size and also the placement of the garage relative to the existing bay window. The applicant has submitted revised plans, including some modifications like the driveway, increasing the driveway front yard setback. And the FAR as well was rechecked, which was an issue that the planning board flagged. It was rechecked, and it does indeed trigger relief for floor area ratio to extend the pre-existing nonconformity. Other relief includes side yard setback for the principal structure in the garage, side yard setback for the deck, and also side yard setback for the garage. Representing the applicant here is attorney Kenneth Goldstein. And let me know who from your team you need to be promoted.
Thank you, Becca. Good evening, planning board members. Yeah, if you could promote Mark from Mark 3 stars, although I see Cameron 3 stars. And Heather, hi Mark. Heather, you there? There she is, sorry. And Bram Shapiro, the applicant. And is Jennifer with us too, Bram? No. You're muted, but I think that's it. Good evening, everybody, and nice to see all my planning board friends and see such good attendance. It's when this started, it was still winter, and now we're on the verge of summer, and it's welcome. As Becca said, there was some concern with this plan at our previous meeting. The most of the concern, to my recollection anyway, involved the landscape and site conditions. So we have gone ahead and had Heather join our team now instead of post relief. And I think the most important thing is to have Heather walk us through the plan. I will say on the ZBA, on the FAR issue that Becca mentioned, which we were not originally cited for, by the way, I consider the change to be de minimis. We're talking less than 0.01% change in the FAR. I also think we can make a pretty simple Dietrich argument that this is a pre-conforming non-conforming condition that in fact the zoning bylaw that allowed given square footage for garage space before it counted FAR was a relatively recent addition to the bylaw. The previous garage had a pre-existing non-conforming condition, and we're just looking to extend that a very small amount. So I'm hoping that we won't get tripped up on it, given that we're never cited for it in the first place, and given also that we have full community neighborhood support, in particular from the directly affected abutters. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Heather to walk us through the landscape and site plan. Heather, do you have it on your computer, or you want me to share my computer with the plans on it? You're muted, by the way.
I have it on my computer. Let's see, I'm getting a message that, let's see, do I have sharing permissions at this moment in time?
Yes, you should be able to share.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to let Heather share then.
I'm not getting there. I might have to lean on you,
Okay.
Ken, if I can't.
Why don't I do it then?
I think that zoomed in view you have right now is fine to get started. I had actually just before the meeting put some color on this to make it a little bit easier for you to see the evergreens from the deciduous plants. But just to kind of start with a brief introduction to the client, to the Shapiros, they've lived in this house for many years and they plan to continue living in this house for many years. This is all work that they're doing kind of for them to enjoy and to grow their family and hopefully grandchildren, and continue to be members of this community. And it's not a thing that they're hoping to do to flip it or something like that. This is really being driven by their own personal desires. So we narrowed the driveway from the previous version in the setback area, kept it narrow until after the setback area where it flares slightly to allow for cars to maneuver past each other at the garage.
Heather, how wide is
added-
how wide
Yes?
is the driveway? As you said, you narrowed it to how wide?
To the same, so in the 20-foot area, it is the same width as the existing.
I see. Okay. Which is
So
what, 10 feet, 12 feet?
I think it's less than that. I'm sorry, I don't have that. I should have measured that right before the meeting.
It's 9.
I think it's 9 or something.
But you're basically just confirming what you said. You're keeping the width essentially what it is now.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
And we have this little sort of set of stairs that go around to the front door that, meet with the driveway area. We moved that out of the setback as well. And just to allow for sort of maximum area for larger shrubs and trees in this setback area. There is a number of on the neighbor's side, there's a very large beech tree and a big pine and some big rhododendrons near the sidewalk. We're sort of building on those rhododendrons with more larger rhododendrons and some white pines kind of along that edge. And then on the sort of the front door entrance side, again, kind of working with some of the larger shrubs that are there. You can see in this photo, right underneath the plant schedule, this very big hydrangea, which will remain, it's 5.5 feet tall. It's a very big shrub. And kind of filling in around it with more rhododendrons and then a small deciduous tree. So within that setback area, it's got some understory, it's got some overstory. We feel that it's pretty full and garden. And then along the street, they're adding a low picket fence, sure to get rid of what's been an eyesore for many a year, the existing stockade fence that's in really rough shape. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see an image of that fence, I think, the existing fence. There it is. They will remove that existing fence and then put in a lower sort of pedestrian friendly 3 foot or 40 inches, I forget exactly what we decided on, picket fence that goes along that front there with sort of 2 little piers at the front directly on line with the front door and some perennial plantings on the inboard side of that picket fence so that the presentation of the house will be have a much better sort of communication with the street than it did previously, but it within this kind of garden context. We can.
Are you also going to discuss the plans? Because I think the main concerns the planning board had is the closeness of the garage to the property line and also the deck. We had some, although we didn't, we just had a question about the relationship between the new door that's coming out the bay and how that connects with the circulation. But I think really the garage and the deck above are the key issues that we need to understand.
Yeah,
What's
we
been
have-
advised.
The
I'm sorry.
architect,
So I'll talk about this elevation along the property line and what we're doing there in terms of plants. And then Mark, you can pitch in with me talking about the deck and the
Sure.
the issues with anything with the roof deck. Ken, can you scroll down a little bit to show the full garage on the plan? Maybe zoom out a tiny bit so people can see the. Okay.
if you want this, I have this plan too, or I could
So
call
that's
it,
the grading plan.
I could call it Mark's plan too, if you prefer.
Okay. So right adjacent to where this garage is or near it, you can see this big black dot. That's the approximate location of the neighbor's beach that's in that area. So there's, quite a bit of shade from this big mature tree. So underneath it, we are planting a number of honeysuckle. We don't want anything too invasive. So we were doing a number of honeysuckle vines to grow up the trellises, rotating with some of the more shade tolerant climbing roses. There is a lot of ivy that's growing in the area, so it's actually going to be an issue to try and keep the ivy from covering the entire garage because it will want to reach that structure and grow on it, and perhaps if it does, we'll let the plant sort of figure out who's the happiest in this particular condition. But, um, but there is, I just want to point out that, sort of from the abutter point of view, there is a lot of ground cover of this creeping of the ivy that's on the ground, and it will want to grow. So Mark, why don't you jump in and address their questions about the roof deck?
Well, Bram could participate in this as well. We had heard the concerns regarding the location and the size, and I think for Bram, the client, he felt as though we had put in a lot of work to come up with the location of the garage, and I don't know if there's some board members who weren't present at that time, but yeah, if you could click on that, that'd be great. The location of the garage was really derived, and the size was really derived from the length north-south of the existing garage, and then the width was really derived from keeping the existing side setback of the existing garage. Could you go to the first page so we can talk about the plan?
Yeah.
There we go.
This page.
Yeah. So that's how we got to the size of the garage, existing length, existing side setback, and then making accommodation for 2 cars to pull in side by side. So that's how we got to the existing size. In terms of the location, Bram really wanted to open up the back of the property for this play area in the back, and also to make it more convenient to use the garage adjacent to the entry of the house. So that was a big component of the push uphill. There were many iterations of this garage that involved either a gable roof, a shed roof. All of those impinged on the view from the existing dining room, which is the bay you see there. And so, we ended up with a box, and that part of that was to actually allow for the continued view out of that family room window. If you scroll down to, I think I think it's A2 or even A3. Right. Yeah, there we go. You can actually, so if you can zoom in on that elevation. There you go. That bay area on the first floor contains the family room. And so we spent quite a bit of time sitting on, there's a couch in there looking out that bay window and determining with some help of this modeling that this does not impinge on the view from the inside of the building. So I think Bram heard your concerns, but I think his feeling was, with having presented this to the neighbors and gotten a lot of positive feedback from these drawings without a beautiful landscape plan, and the work that we had put in to try and get it to this location, he was very reluctant to sort of change the things that we had come up with. So if you look at the plans that have been submitted, the location has not really changed. What we tried to address were some of the landscape issues that were present. And I think the one thing that came up in the discussions, actually being on site, and it's not presented here, is if you're standing on the sidewalk, this is well down from a straight on view. The elevation that's presented lower down the front of the garage, that view is actually taken from halfway down the garage. So you're not at the top of the elevation. And that was to try and present the honest view of what the facade looked like for an elevation, as opposed to a beauty shot from the sidewalk, in which this whole structure is actually much further down. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Mark,
So
did we narrow the garage opening to, I believe?
The garage opening was actually, is actually larger in this view.
Okay.
I think that I'm interested in what members of the boards think about the setback issue for a attached garage is supposed to be 10 feet, and for a deck is 6 feet. And I think that in my mind, and that's the key issue for the board to consider, is whether this amount of relief is warranted. Members of the board, your thoughts about the setback? I thought we could talk about that first. I don't think this is going to turn on what the landscaping plan was. I think it was very helpful, but I don't think that's the central issue here myself. Members of the board, your thoughts about setback here and whether we're establishing any precedent here or not.
I'm happy to go first. I just overlaid the plans. Like, I don't see what's different, and nothing's different other than the side driveway. So thank you for clarifying. To talk about the setbacks, the existing garage is too close to the rear yard setback and no further into the side yard setback. So I actually don't see this as making the condition worse on the side, and in fact, making it better at the rear. Certainly there's a longer length of building edge on the side now than the existing, but if you look at that existing footprint, it's also within 6 feet of the side yard setback anyway. So I don't see that as dramatically worse.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt, with regards to the setbacks. And I also, in looking at these plans, I notice the same thing. It doesn't seem that there's any reduction in scale for the garage, even though, to my recollection, and I believe it's reflected in the minutes, the scale of the garage was brought up when it was before us previously, and it doesn't seem that there's been any change. So we're still looking at the 22 by 37, but now the garage door is actually wider and it's still a 4-car garage. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so it improves the rear setback, doesn't change the side setback, but I don't think it's responded to the scale concerns that the board presented before. And the other question I had, I know this is getting a little off of the setbacks that Blair wanted to talk about, is
No, this is good.
what is the rear? I know there's the rear patio. Is that going to be a permeable surface?
No, that is concrete.
Okay.
He wanted a surface for potentially for ball play for his grandkids.
Okay.
At some point, sort of a play area. But the whole idea was to open up that backyard area because it's one of the few flat places on the site. The entirety of the site is sloped except for that area in the very back. If you look at look at the cover sheet, Ken, if you could scroll back up to the cover sheet quickly.
I think that's my concern a little bit about having a large paved non-permeable surface behind that garage. Is if everything's sloped, how are we handling water management with neighbors behind? I mean,
we cut Heather off pretty quickly, but she had, in her landscape plan, she had addressed that with a drainage structure in that area. So that was part of the landscaping plan, was to address the information that we got with the topographical survey.
Great. Sorry if I missed that. I was going back and looking at the meetings and things too. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask, going to follow up about this issue of the garage and its width.
Right.
One concern I have here is how are you going to build this? You have, what is it, a 2-foot setback off the property line?
Correct. Two
so how?
2.5
So
feet.
you have to dig a trench to put in footings, and given the fact that you have a slope down there, how are you going to do that within your property? Without going into the neighbor's property, in which case, if you went into the neighbor's property, even if you had permission, you're going to be all over the roots of the beech tree, which have very shallow roots and do not like being trod upon. Anyway, I'm not comfortable with how wide this is, but I'm interested in other members of the board's opinion, and the fact that you have an existing garage that you're going to tear down, and then you're kind of using that as precedent for putting in the new garage. I'm not entirely buying that, but I can be persuaded depending on what the rest of the board thinks about this matter.
Can I just say one thing about I understand everything you've just said. The existing garage is practically fallen down as
No,
it
I
is.
understand. I
Okay,
understand
okay.
that. No, I'm talking about the existing garage and its dimensions
Yeah.
and how you're going to build it 2 feet off the property line. That seems to me to be rather impractical. Your hole would be right up against the property line. You'd be digging it from the front of the and coming in there, and then they have to put in the forms. Don't quite see how they're doing that without building, basically getting some kind of construction agreement with the abutter. Anyway, Linda, you've done a lot of projects like this. Your
There,
thoughts?
I'll just say that the abutter is very cooperative. with
No, I
it.
understand that, and I appreciate that too. And the abutter may not recognize the impact that this will have on their tree. But Linda, your thoughts about
I haven't
this
had a
issue?
lot of experience, but I mean, it's better than, at least the landscape plan helps, and I guess the shift slightly, I could see the stairs, but it's just a lot of impervious material, like all concrete. And right up to the property line. I don't like that patio business. It's just, you're not playing NBA back there. I wish it was just a little less on all counts. I am concerned about the beach. And that was going to be one of my questions to the landscape architects on your probabilities on that one. Anyway.
Linda, we are, I want to point out, we are losing that big, very kind of awkward front yard patio, so that's reclaimed space.
Stephen, what are your
I
thoughts
think-
about the construction
I think
about
there are
and
a
the
lot
width
of-
of this?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of pros and cons here. I think, Blair, you raised some of the concerns about its constructability. I'm still kind of put off by the overall size of the garage. I understand the owner wants to be able to work on cars and wants to not only be able to accommodate 4 cars in his garage. He talked about maybe eventually putting in a lift and parking additional cars in the driveway, although he's narrowed it within the front yard setback. They've done a few things to enhance this. I think the landscaping is a huge improvement, as not just taking down the stockade fence and replacing that, and some very nice plantings. But then there is that large concrete pad in the back. They are proposing to have a permeable pavement in the driveway. That's a pro. And there are all these letters of support from the neighbors, including the direct abutter who owns the beech tree and whose own carriage house, which is a pretty handsome structure, also appears to be very close to, if not on the property line. There's a cyclone fence, which is, I'm guessing, pretty close to the property line, and that carriage house is, the fence runs right into that carriage house. So the neighbor, has his own, historic carriage house right on the property line, which would actually be made more visible by taking down this ramshackle existing garage. So it's kind of a quandary for me. I recognize what Matt said at the beginning about setting a precedent. I think we like to say that we look at each project on its own merits and how it fits and what its context is. And just because we approve something like this doesn't mean that we would approve the next garage that is 2 feet from a property line. So
we approved a garage of was on the corner of Center Street and I forget the abutting thing,
William.
but William. And
Right.
I think that was kind of dubious. I'm not sure we made a great decision on that because of how close it is. But in that situation, the garage was basically attached to the building. This garage is attached because there's decking there. But it really seems to me that if they want this wide of a garage, I'm wondering why it can't be more directly attached to the building. For example, sliding it back so its left side is basically coplanar with the forward edge of the bay, and shifted back as architecturally appropriate. That would basically, it looks to me, would move the garage about 5 feet off the property line, making it more buildable. I understand that that would create, some other problems to be solved in terms of the building, but that would be one way for the owner to have the full size of this and yet have a little bit more setback on the property line. I'm really not buying the magical idea that, well, we have an existing building we're tearing down, so therefore we get to build the same thing with the same setback. I'm not going to buy that argument here. So I'm sympathetic to the client's program here, but I think it should be shifted away. That's my view. But as I said, I'm one vote here. I'm interested in what the rest of the board thinks. Mark, you're on this one call, aren't you, today?
Can I just make one comment? It's Bram Shapiro. I'm not, with all due respect, because I'm not an architect, I'm not sure if what you describe works, because shifting it over would not allow for the width of 2 cars to enter it. So, and the other downside to that is, what the plan, I mean, Mark and I have worked in this for over a year, after meeting with the planning department in December of 2023. So every detail has been explored, and, including building it in the existing place, as Mark said, putting a roof on. The way we came up with this was that we wanted to create open usable space. And so by putting it where we are, we're creating open usable space in the backyard that doesn't exist currently, and usable space on top of the garage that doesn't exist. Right. And by the way, just to clarify 2 points, the existing garage has a huge concrete pad under it. So
no, I appreciate, I mean, I'm
okay.
In support of, I'm not trying to challenge your program here. I'm just really looking at whether there's a way of increasing the setback without eliminating your desire for a 4-car garage, because obviously you could have it be narrower and be able to have a commodious 2-car garage back to, front to back, and have less impact in terms of the side yard setback. But I'm trying to go ahead.
I'm just going to mention that just to correct one point, we have no interest in parking cars in the driveway or more cars in the driveway. We park all our cars in the driveway now, and one of the big benefits of this is taking 3 or 4 tandem cars in our driveway and making them disappear, and one of them sits basically right at the sidewalk. So
right.
Yeah. And by the way, with the elevations, I mean, I'll admit, we spent a lot of money between the last hearing and this hearing, which is not really relevant, but we didn't have Mark draw an elevation from the street. But I think you asked us to provide elevations. So the surveyor came back, he took all new measurements, and I think the elevations show this as about 5 feet below ground or below street level, or
right. Yeah, I'm not concerned about its impact or about the architecture. I'm really, fairly narrowly focused here. Mark, not to put you on a spot, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm muted. Okay. Well, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. I have a garage I built right on a property line, so I think it can happen, and I'm actually in favor of this. But I do have some conditions that I think should be added, because I don't particularly care for the concrete behind the garage. And I think that recently I've had the good fortune to have a lot of experience with the tree protection bylaw. And I think that we could invoke this as a condition for that beech tree that's on the property adjacent to this. And I don't think that it would be a bad thing to do to ask for an arborist to evaluate that tree and then come up with some sort of plan for the construction of this garage, so that we can do something with the roots, so that the roots aren't sort of like pulled out during construction, but they're cut and so forth. So there would be a maintenance plan associated with the construction regarding that tree or any other trees that are alongside of the property. And I don't think that's a hardship. I think it's just going to hopefully save the tree long, let it be there longer than a shorter time. But I would allow this with some conditions and that I just mentioned, including I'm not really understanding the back and the concrete area there. It seems to be probably what's left over from the old garage. If that's the case, I think it should be removed, but that's my opinion. And I think that you can't start redesigning this thing with regard to the connection between the garage and the house, because I think that's been worked out.
Mhm.
So that's where I sit on it.
All right. Well, I think I'm just going to reiterate my concern. I just don't see how you dig that foundation for it without going across the property line.
Well, I can tell you that I did that. Completely vertical. Yes.
Well, I'm
Well,
thinking,
one-
but they have a challenge here because the grade is sloping down, that the footings for this foundation are have to be stepped. I
So
presume.
stepping away from the beech tree, it's getting further from the beech tree as it steps down.
Right. But they're going to have, I'm just talking about the footing themselves are going to be stepping down. Presumably, if they're going down 4 feet and and that's ground is sloping like it is, it's going to have to be, the trench is going to step down or some fashion. The foundation is going to have to be dealt with.
I
Alright.
just wanted to
I'd
share.
like
I just wanted to share with you that just as an FYI, the neighbor again who blessed this 9 or 10 months ago is actually a developer, so he's very familiar with construction and related issues, and he is thrilled on 2 fronts. One, because the carriage house you talked about is going to be more visible, and the neighbors on the other side at 141 are now going to be able to see the carriage house instead of our garage. And number 2, instead of looking out at our garage as it currently exists, he's going to look out at the new one. So he can appear before you if that's helpful, but he can't wait for this to get done.
I believe what you're saying. Andrea?
Claire, I would like to find a way to approve this. I certainly think that Mark's point about the tree protection and that existing beech tree needs to be protected and that some reference to that needs to be incorporated. I also think, I know that I looked at the landscape. I'm not thrilled with this big concrete pad. It's even larger than the footprint of the old garage by about 50% in the back. And I noticed on the landscape plan that there's like some bulbs being planted along the property line. But in this garage or this pad or patio, like the old garage, goes right to the rear property line with nothing there. And I see there is an existing evergreen hedge on the rest of the property. I would suggest that that evergreen hedge or something comparable to it be extended across the rear property line so that this new concrete slab, I assume it's a new slab, it's much bigger than the existing one, doesn't go right to the property line. That to me would be another mitigating factor, along with the work that's being done in the front and the trellis and the climbing vines along the side. And I think the fact that the abutter, particularly the one on the right, as well as other neighbors, are okay with this without it setting a precedent, makes me willing to approve it.
Andrea, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Please.
Okay, so I have a few comments and I'd like a response. The first one is how, with the 2.3 feet and the plantings there, how are those getting maintained or taken care of?
I'm sorry, the question was about maintenance?
Yes, like how are you getting back there? Are you walking on the neighbor's property to take care of them?
I think that they will endeavor to try and stay on their property within the 2.5 feet, but I think if they get off of it a little bit,
There are many examples in this town of tight squeezes to maintain the edge of a garage.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering the value of the plantings and well, I know you probably don't want the ivy growing up, but if you don't, how, that's going to be a constant maintenance thing. So that's something to think about. And then I was wondering, We haven't really talked about the roof deck yet.
Thank you.
But, you know, also the canopy, the size of the canopy on the beech tree and how that affects the garage. And if we think the roof deck needs to be set back or it needs to exist at all. And if it could have some sort of green sedum roof, if that's a possibility.
Mhm.
And
Well, this-
then, yeah,
Go ahead.
then
I was just gonna say the canopy of the beech tree is completely on the neighbor's property. It doesn't overhang this property.
okay.
Hmm.
So I guess if we could talk about the roof deck, and also I'm really not happy because I believe I had suggested that the garage door gets smaller and instead it got bigger. And we also discussed some materials that I think all four sides are different, or at least three, and that wasn't really addressed either.
Well,
Mark,
since you
you-
raised that point, I think the panels on the rear of the garage are very unattractive. I don't
Well,
know
we
why
already
you would
talked about
continue
that
these
at the
being
last meeting,
clabbered.
so I just would like a response.
Mark, you want to talk about the decision on the rear material and the
The roof deck. And the
well-
garage door getting wider, which I'm not in favor of.
I'll just say they're eliminating their open patio, the only open patio space they have in the front yard, which is cumbersome, not private and not particularly attractive. They'd like to have an open space. They did look into a suggestion had been made that you narrow the width of the roof deck on the garage, but that plainly just frankly just looked very, very awkward and unsymmetrical. So that was eliminated. And as in terms of the material in the back, you know, it's not something that's visible, and I think they went with an efficient solution there. But
Well, part of the decision for the paneling that you see there was some idea that there'd be some ball play at the back there, and having paneling was the most durable solution. And then Jennifer Bram Shapiro's wife had expressed some interest in doing murals along that surface. So I think there was a durability issue, which came up with the idea of kids being back there and using that as a ball playing area, and that's kind of how we got to that decision. Also, we thought that it wasn't visible from the street, and really the people living there who were throwing balls against it wouldn't really care, and it was really a durability question, and that's how that came to be.
And the rear abutters have also signed off on the project. They have arguably one of the worst views from where they stand. So they saw exactly what was proposed, and they're very, very happy with it.
And why is the roof deck necessary?
Mark, I don't want to speak for you, but we drew this without a roof deck, and it is so much more attractive with the roof deck. Number one, and number two, it just creates usable space where there'd otherwise be, nothing. So it is existing deck to access the kitchen door along the side of the house, and it just fit very, very nicely to have additional deck space there.
How much additional deck space? How much additional deck space?
The idea was that you would activate that space. We'd had it without, and it was a big flat area on top of this rectangular box. And as soon as we went through the iteration of putting railing around it, it really tied it into the other existing deck. And then also the idea of enlivening it with planters, human activity, maybe a pergola at some point, that you would actually make it a much more attractive portion of the building, as opposed to you would see, as you see it from the street, you would just see the top of the rectilinear structure. So
how big? So the deck is 20 feet by 36 feet or 40 feet?
It is slightly smaller than the existing than the building.
I mean, that's gargantuan. I mean, I certainly appreciate the fact that you would put the railing would make it more attractive, but that's enormous. And and you're wanting relief for the deck's separation from the property line, you could still have a railing around the outside and have some planters or something like that in there. I just think it's it was going to be unpleasantly large. I mean, we've gotten this on some other projects, these really oversized decks because they just fit over the structure, and so that becomes the size of it.
The project seems really blunt to me. I mean, we want this and we have this, and so we're just going to make the deck that size, and we'd like as much concrete in the back as possible. I mean, I think there's got to be some softening of the edges here, you know, particularly, you know, in the back. I think, you know, at least give enough space, maybe not you, maybe your new neighbors some other day. You know, when we sit on the board, we're looking at the future, not just, you know, who's right next door now, but looking at the possibilities going forward. And I think there's got to be a planting strip on both sides, you know, on both sides of that big blank space. Maybe they don't put anything in, but I think there's got to be a 4-foot edge on both sides of that. And decks in New England, I mean, it's going to face, I don't know, south. It's going to be hot. You're going to have to maintain whatever the material is on that. I mean, it may look appealing now, but it's a maintenance nightmare. Anyway, I'm trying to look at it practically too. I mean, if you want a pergola, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace, because I mean, that would probably come back as well. I don't know.
Well, forget a pergola. You could put an accessory dwelling unit there. That deck is 800 square feet.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have a 2-bedroom apartment in that amount of space.
So,
we would be willing to move that, to make the deck smaller. I mean, I see the planning board's point. My client does too. We're texting while you're talking, and you know, if you want a foot or two setback from the precipice of the garage, I think that's a.
I mean, I think you certainly could certainly have it be 4 feet, which would make the deck 6 feet off the property line, which would eliminate that. You wouldn't even have to get a special permit for that because you'd be compliant. And that would still give you a 16-foot wide deck that's 40 feet long, which I think is, again, way too big. But that would eliminate one special permit here.
On this.
Planning department, I believe, mentioned it, and we, you know, we sort of drew a look at it, and with all due respect, it looks horrible. There's a lack of pushed in on.
Bram, we can hear you.
Bram, you could still have the railing at the edge of the deck. I mean, of the structure, and then you would have the deck set back, you know, 4 feet from there, and that would give you a planter in there, which would also give some, I think, would make the deck more pleasant. And
that would be awkward to have.
So what I was going to say to you, I mean, I've lived in Brookline for over 40 years. My mother lives in Brookline, and so grew up here. And we got permission on Garrison Road 20 some odd years ago to build a deck at 47 Garrison, which is the row houses there at the corner of Garrison and Tappan. And one of the conditions the board put on that deck, which went basically right to the property line, was to put greenery on it, because as a row house, there was no place to plant it on the ground. But our hope would be to put planters on the deck, which are actually, I mean, one of the issues was we talked about internally was the planters and creating green space on the deck and a barrier, you know, from the street if we're using the deck, and maintaining that is much easier when it's sitting on the deck than when it's sitting on the rubber roof, because then you know, it's a different height and you run into issues of accessing and also damaging the roof. I mean, I'm not excited about, by the way, we used composite decking, which is what we used for the current deck when we repaired it. So it's very low maintenance. I'm not excited about spending, that kind of money on a composite deck, but it's the most durable, lowest maintenance, and it looks great. And in terms of putting planters on, it's incredibly strong, and that was sort of the plan, even though we didn't draw the planters in.
So Blair, we've already spent almost an hour on this
Yeah,
project, and
I think,
I feel like, we've tried to offer suggestions and the applicant is not really accepting our help here.
so,
Yeah.
so shall we just call a vote here and see where we are?
Well, what if we added,
No,
I don't know if everybody would agree to these conditions, but I think requiring they made an attempt by putting a trellis on the property line edge of the deck, but if we required that they put at least say a 3-foot planter on the property line edge of the deck, I don't know that they need one in the front or the back. And that I heard Linda echo my thought that they extend a landscape buffer across the rear property line, pull the patio in 3 or 4 feet.
And the side.
And the side, yeah. I mean, there's no reason for that patio to be that large. They can have a 4-foot buffer on the side and the rear. Doesn't have to
Especially if
line
they
up
have the
exactly
roof
with the
deck.
garage. I accept the owner's, his point that he'd like to be able to use the back of the garage for kickball or whatever. Okay. But those would be my conditions for approving this, accepting, not to pull the deck itself back, but to put planters on the deck along the side property line and a 4-foot planting strip along the rear, around that patio, side and rear.
All right,
The-
so
and
I
the-
think,
Conditions about
Sorry,
the-
I
I just
think
was
we
gonna,
should-
I'm listening to everything you're saying, and we tried to listen last time too. The side plantings, I'm not sure that that's actually an aesthetic. I mean, I don't have an objection to it, but it'll cover up the neighbor's carriage
yeah,
house.
let's,
Enough already, enough
we-
already. I think,
I think it's time for us to vote.
and we vote
Okay.
on these conditions. If you don't want to accept them,
I'm
Then
I'm
you
happy
can
to
take it to
accept
the
them. I'm only
ZBA.
suggesting,
take it to the ZBA.
I'm only suggesting to you that.
The landscape
maybe-
architect can come up with some plantings that won't
Great.
totally hide the neighbor's carriage house, I'm sure.
Okay.
So, so I'm not going to vote in favor of this, notwithstanding the suggestions. But so, Stephen had come up with some, conditions, and, which had to do with, if you could just state those conditions, and then we can have a vote whether that is an amendment to the plans we've looked at, or agreeable to the board or not agreeable to the board.
Okay.
But I'm not in agreement with the size of this thing,
Fine,
so I'm going to vote no.
Totally understood. The 2 conditions I've added, and I also, Mark made some points about the tree protection plan and concerns about the beech tree, which should be included. But I'm saying that this plan should include a 3-foot planter along the property line edge of the deck, front to back, and a 4-foot planting strip on both the property line, the side and rear property lines of the proposed patio, with the
Okay.
landscape plan to include plantings on those, on both the rear planting strip and the garage deck planters.
So,
then-
Stephen, do you want to make that a motion of approval?
Yeah, I would, well, if Becca wants to put up the conditions, I will make a motion to approve with those added conditions.
Can I add my condition?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Yes, your condition about the,
Yeah, I would just, it would be an added condition to have an arborist evaluate the
Sure.
the tree, and then prepare a maintenance plan and a construction and a maintenance plan to, solve the issues related to the roots that are going to be exposed
And damaged.
and damaged. Yeah.
Okay. So
All right. With
Stephen's
those
made a motion.
amendments, I'm going to make a motion to approve the revised site plan prepared by Bruce Bradford, PLS, dated June 2nd, 2025, and architectural plans prepared by William Bohm, RA, dated May 30, 2025, with the following conditions. 1, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall electronically submit final floor plans and elevations stamped and signed by a registered architect, and a final site plan stamped and signed by a registered engineer or land surveyor to the Director for Regulatory Planning for review and approval. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall electronically submit a landscape plan subject to approval by the Director for Regulatory Planning or designee. The counterbalancing amenities, well, yeah, before that, I would add those other conditions about including the deck or the planter on the garage roof, on the garage deck, and the additional planting strips to the side and rear of the new rear patio. And then add the counterbalancing amenities must be executed in accordance with the approved plan. Then add Mark's condition about the preservation of the beech tree. And then 4, if you can scan, oh no, I guess I have enlarged this. Scan down a little bit. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall electronically submit, oops, going the wrong way. Hold on, I have to reduce my screen. Oops, sorry. Prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall electronically submit to the building commissioner for review and approval, A, the site plan, floor plans, and elevations, displaying the approval stamp of the Director for Regulatory Planning, and B, evidence that the Board of Appeals decision has been obtained from the town clerk's office by the applicant or their representative and recorded at the Registry of Deeds. That's the amended motion. Do I hear a second?
Who is seconding it?
I'll second it.
Okay, Matt seconds it. So
Matt.
all in favor of it,
In
Stephen,
favor. Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Andrea?
No.
No, and the chair votes no.
What about Linda
Oh, Linda.
Aye.
And Tommy.
and
Oh,
Tommy?
excuse me, and Tommy. So I'm
No
s-
for me.
okay, so we have 2 no's and we have,
I think
uh,
I think it was
Tommy
3 no's.
said
Oh,
no.
Tommy said no.
I said no.
okay, all right.
4
I'm
yeses
sorry.
and 3 noes. The motion passes.
Okay,
So clearly the ZBA should note that we have some concerns.
Thank you, board. Your conditions are acceptable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I
so
know.
in the future, how would I make, can I make the motion for approval when I don't approve it?
You
Of
could,
course.
but I mean, that's okay. I think what you did was all right.
Yeah, that's
right.
usually what we do. Someone
Yeah.
else makes the
Okay, all right. It just seemed, it created a rather awkward vote here, so,
Right.
all right, thank you, Becca, for keeping track of it.
Sure. So moving on to the next case, 30 Lion Road. This is a 2-story single-family home located in an S7 district, and this is in Chestnut Hill. And the applicant is proposing to legalize a shed that is already in place on the side of the principal structure. So just for context, in 2023, the Board of Appeals granted a special permit to connect a detached garage to the principal structure to the house via a mud room. So the garage and the house are now connected, and this shed has been constructed to the side, to the left side of the garage. So relief is needed for accessory buildings or structures in side yards, which doesn't comply with the 6-foot requirement side yard setback. Representing the applicant here is actually the owner. Nemit Shroff is here and will be presenting the proposal.
Thank you, Becca, and thank you everyone for being here. And many thanks specifically to Becca and Polly for answering many of my largely ignorant questions, I would say. Can I share my screen, Becca?
Yes, please. And also just like to know that we received 8 letters of support of this for for many of the direct abutters.
Thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just thought I'll just show what the shed looks like and what the background is before and then answer any questions or suggestions you'll have. So here's the picture of the shed. It's the siding and roof shingles were constructed to match the garage, which is right next to it. There's a cinder block foundation, and everything is pressure treated. The height of the shed is 10 feet, all the way until the apex is a little less than 12.5 feet. The width is 12 feet. There's 2 feet distance between the shed and the garage and the shed and our neighbor's fence. The foundation is about 6 inches off. So there's it is just cinder blocks on the floor and the shed on top of it. In terms of location, where exactly this is, so this is the certified plot plan for our house, and the shed is right here. So this is our garage. This was the new addition that we had that you all kindly approved 2 years ago, and here is the shed. If I just zoom into this part, it looks like this. So the width between the garage and the fence and our neighbor's fence was about 16.1 feet, and we located the shed here. Just giving you a full picture of how things look like now. This is our shed. This is the garage, which was there from when the house was built, and this is the new addition, which helps connect the garage and our house. So just to give you a background for how this came about and why I'm asking permission now to legalize the shed is even before we asked for the permission to correct the house and the garage, in 2022, I applied for a permit, just a regular permit, to build a shed. And it was primarily just to store my girls' bikes and some landscaping equipment. When I applied for the permit, my original application showed a picture for the shed, very much like what the shed is right now, with 12 feet wide, 2 feet to spare on both sides. The building inspector then, Jason Granai, he wrote me and asked if I could move the shed 6 feet from the side setback. So that would be here, 6 feet from here. And at the time, I applied for the permit myself, and I said yes, thinking it was possible. I sent in the revised drawings to Jason. I spoke to Tom Brady then, the conservation from the Conservation Commission over the phone, and he okayed the proposal. Jason then issued the permit, and then we began work on the shed. When we started the construction of the shed, we realized that if we pushed the shed 6 feet in towards the garage, it would look really awkward because the shed just wouldn't be centered between in that space. So it was looking awkward, and this is how the shed ended up where it is. Which, I mean, in hindsight, I realized that this was a mistake. So come 2024, as you'll recall, I applied for a special permit to connect our mudroom to our garage, which is this part. So that construction is now complete. And when I applied for the certificate of occupancy for the addition, Jason came for the final inspection, and he flagged the shed issue to me. So I spoke to the commissioner, and he said that the approach is either I apply for a special permit or take the shed down at this time. We found the shed to be very helpful as a place to store our kids' bikes, their outdoor toys, and some landscaping equipment. We've spoken to every single one of our neighbors, the neighbors across the street, the neighbors down the road from us. Not one person has raised any concern with the shed. Every single abutting neighbor has written a letter saying that they support the shed. The only person who's not written is the person from 19 Craftsland Road. I went to the house over the weekend, primarily just to take a picture to show you what the rear setback, what the shed looks like from their place. The one of their family members is not well, so that's why they've not written. That's what they told me, but they don't have any objection to the shed being where it is. Just to show you what it looks like. So they were kind enough to let me come into the backyard. So if I stand in the backyard, this is what you really can't see the shed. So this part is our garage. If I go further into their backyard, right up to the edge, and I really point my camera looking from up, you can see the shed. So as far as what they're concerned, they say it wasn't a problem. I also met with Alex Cassie yesterday. So Alex is now I believe in Tom Brady's position after Tom left. Alex saw the shed yesterday, and he said that since the shed was more than 50 feet away from the wetland zone, we do not have to apply for approval from the Conservation Commission. I'll pause there, and I have some ideas for what might be counterbalancing improvements, but please let me know what you think.
Thank you. Members of the board.
Can somebody explain the FAR requirements for this lot, and if in fact, you know, the shed puts you over to FAR requirements?
Becca?
So the FAR here was not flagged by the building commissioner, and we rely on their interpretation and reading of zoning. But I can pull up I can check on the approval for last year, what the FAR was.
The reason why I ask this, is because we could approve this shed, but we can't approve it if it's over the FAR, because that's a variance.
Yes, but it turns out that if a shed is under 150 square feet, you don't have to count it towards the FAR.
And it also seems to me that this is a temporary building. It's not a permanent building.
Is this,
Yeah, I had the same thought there.
How many square feet is the shed then?
120.
120.
120?
This is, I think, an example of that situation where it is better to ask forgiveness than permission. And I am willing to forgive and move on.
And I appreciate his honesty.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate any shed that allows people to put their cars in the garage instead of loading the garage up with stuff and then having their cars parked in front of the garage. So I think that's good. And I think the particular nature of these lots also makes this shed being close to the setback line less onerous than it may otherwise be on a different type of lot, given where the other structures are located.
And also, unlike the previous project, despite it having a very small side yard setback, it does have lush greenery, looking at the Google Maps.
Okay.
I wouldn't have forgiven the
and-
previous project.
I
because
think that rationalizing this the way the board is doing is fine. I can see that. But because there's no definitive delineation of the FAR, we're making a big mistake if we approve this now before we know what the FAR numbers are.
I
Well, I
just
thought-
checked the
I thought
FAR. Can I quickly
Please.
just clarify to Mark, when they got the approval for the mudroom last year, the FAR increased to 0.27, and the allowed FAR in the zoning district is 0.35. So I believe that even if this would count, it will still be under the FAR, but I think as Polly clarified, it does not count.
Okay, that's good.
All right,
That's good
so-
enough for me.
So let the record show that, addressing Mark's concern that
Because
this is within the.
we should approve this based on setback and other issues, not FAR.
Okay, very good. Are there any members of the public who need to speak on this?
No public comments on
All
this
right,
case.
okay, so if you could put up the conditions,
I have one quick suggestion.
please.
What's you said it's 12 feet wide by 10 feet deep.
Correct.
Can I share my screen real quick?
Ms. Schroff.
Yeah.
Let me
okay.
promote you.
Just to share. I was a little surprised by how close you put the shed next to the garage. It looked like it was blocking the windows because you had it. Sorry, I'm gonna make a copy of this. You have it like here. And it does look like the shape of your driveway with the property line, you could potentially locate it away from the garage a little bit and let that space be open. I'm not saying do this, but there does look like an opportunity if you would like to position it so it feels like there's some space around it and you get the light back into your garage window, you could do so. That's all.
All right, so we're not going to, that's a suggestion to the owner,
Yep.
but which I appreciate, but we're going to have a vote on basically allowing this structure, this temporary structure I'm going to add to be approved. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the temporary shed. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So, what was there actually a site plan done here, or is this just was something that the Mr. Schroff had put together? I don't believe there was a site plan here. Becca,
It's a schematic site plan, and we're not requiring it to be certified or
right.
official.
So it shouldn't be a site plan by the engineer is all I'm saying. So we're going to just basically approve the plan as presented by the owner of a temporary shed that's located as diagrammed. Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
again.
Okay, with under the following conditions. There's no following conditions because it's already been built. So I think this is all we need to do, isn't it, Polly and Becca? Is approve the existing building as constructed, the temporary building as constructed. So all in favor, Matt,
Aye.
Tommy,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Mark,
I,
Andrea,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. So we're done with you're now legal.
It still needs to
Okay.
go to the ZBA, but
It does.
yes, that's a step.
Okay, all right. And I think that was all the cases, and we're going to do doing the Kent Webster now. Is that correct, Becca?
Yes, that's correct. And for that, I'm just going to hand it over to my colleague, Senior Planner Maria Morelli, and the applicant's team from Bob Allen's office.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, Becca. My name is Maria Morelli, a senior planner in the regulatory division. And just quickly want to say, this is a joint meeting of the planning board and its appointed design advisory team for 40 Kent, 40 Webster Place. This is a pre-application stage or design review where the design advisory team is looking at, based on some direction that the planning board gave in August 2024, to look at the site circulation, the site configuration of this major impact project and the relationship to the two-family neighborhood on Linden Street. So I do want to turn it over to the chair of the design advisory team to talk about the latest charge. There have been 5 meetings where the design advisory team has given progressive instruction and the applicant has been responsive at each time with public comment. This would be the first planning board meeting where you would have public comment, and that would be very helpful to the board to also consider what the public has to say at this point. So if there's anything else, I just quickly want to remind people that not only is it a major impact project, but the applicant is seeking floor area ratio bonuses and height bonuses in exchange for public benefit. There is a menu of them, and the one that the applicant is proposing is historic preservation under the allowed provisions for public benefit incentives. Matt, do you want to say something first before we turn it over to Attorney Allen?
Yeah, I'll be brief because I don't know that all of the members of the planning board have been able to follow along with the hearings we've had since we did our check-in with the planning board last month. But we did ask the applicant before our DAT hearing to develop the scheme that you all had sort of asked about, which was going back to that original massing, keeping 40 Kent where it was. But we asked them to do that, but to keep all of the, I'll call them negotiated, although that's a loose term, the negotiated setbacks and step backs that we have worked on with the abutters along the Linden Street neighborhood. So they did do that. And frankly, it was not nearly as viable in terms of the number of units that they could achieve on that site, and formally was not quite as strong as the direction they were going. So we agreed to let them continue with the other option, and that was refined and developed, and we provided some feedback. And what you'll see tonight, I think, is widely supported by the neighbors, by the abutters, by the members of the DAT, and by the development team. So we feel like we've gotten to a really great place in terms of building consensus about what we're doing and how we're doing it. But just so you're not shocked, it is the direction that we had been working on with them before we came to the planning board. But that doesn't mean that we did not take your suggested scheme seriously and look at it as an option at that subsequent hearing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Allen.
Thanks, Matt and Maria. Just for the record, my name is Bob Allen. I have a law practice 300 Washington Street in Brookline Village. I'm here representing the owner of the property. I have Trina, who I believe is on here. Peter Murphy is on here also. Let me just start. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I want to thank Matt in particular. I think this is maybe Matt's first time flying solo as chair of a DAT, and his ability to just kind of push us and try to get consensus amongst not just the group but the neighborhood really challenged Peter and Peter King. Did I call him Murphy? Peter King is the architect, and
Quinn.
No, Quinn. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
Get it eventually. Yeah.
Sorry, Peter.
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
You know, it's always hard when you have a big project and you have a neighborhood really focused on one aspect, you have the town needs focused on another aspect, and you have the developer focused on another aspect. And I tell people all the time, there's in any development project, there is a time when the tomato ripens on the vine, right? And this was one of those projects I'm like, oh my God, when the hell is this tomato gonna ripen on the vine? And you know, it was really after this planning board meeting, and I had some concerns about when Matt said, oh, let's go back to the planning board and get some feedback, because you're kind of going down this one direction, and you're gonna bring the planning board in, they're gonna have a different opinion. But it was really helpful because I think it solidified the neighborhood in saying, hey, listen, we really like this direction you're going in. And it solidified the DAT to say, you know something, this direction we pushed you in was the right direction. And, you know, as a result of it, you know, I always liked the building at 40 Kent Street. I never thought picking up and moving it would be the right thing to do. But boy, picking up and moving it made so much sense after we went through this process, because it gives the neighborhood what they want, a little breathing room, a little elbow room, some view corridors, and it allows us to kind of push the development forward to Kent Street, which arguably is, you know, consistent with the streetscape along Kent Street. So I think Peter did a wonderful job. Peter Quinn, that is, did a wonderful job in working with it. And I will tell you this, you know, we had challenges along the way, and we were pushed along the way. And you know, I again, Matt, thank you for your work and the DAT's work for really pushing us. And I think Peter was so responsive, you know, and I give a lot of credit to developers. A lot of developers say, listen, I can only go so far. This developer gave Peter free rein and really said, you know, Bob, if you think it's to follow the DAT is the right thing to do, and we follow the DAT. And I think we have a proposal here. Very rarely can you say that DAT is supportive and the neighborhood is supportive. And this is a big project, and it's going to be great for the town. I think it'll be great for the village. I think the village needs some vibrancy. It needs some foot traffic, and I think this will help provide it. And we have a developer here who's ready to move forward and actually build something, not just permit it, but actually build something. So I'm very excited about this project. It's something I'll look at every day. And with that, I'll turn it over to Peter and let him show you where we are.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, my name is Peter Quinn, architect, principal owner of Peter Quinn Architects in Davis Square, Somerville. Done many projects in Brookline over the years. I'm happy to be back here. I also want to mention that a lot of the work was done by Mark Nielsen and some other members of my staff as well. So I'm going to share the screen. If I may. And we have changed the format of the building a little bit, in the sense that while the building is approximately the same size as we've had all along, that is an FAR of 2.5. We've, under the guidance of our client, have proposed to break that up into much smaller units, which the client can speak about that if there's any questions, but basically it would be primarily studios and small one bedrooms would make up the majority of the building. And these would likely be furnished and easily rented, on a not short-term basis, but for the people who work in the area and may have a home somewhere else, but they're here for a year or two, working in the hospitals or in some of the other employment settings in the area. Now, you see a view here of 40 Kent Street, and it's true that we're moving that, but we're also rotating it. And the reason why I say that is because the porch is right now situated so that it's parallel with Webster Place. And the building as it faces Kent Street has no doorway, really no entry of any kind. So the entry is actually kind of along this porch side and in the back. So we've taken the cue from that, turned the building and spaced it with this kind of a typical spacing you would find on Webster Street with the older houses, and put the porch facing the corner. At right angles to that, we've set up our new building, and this building consists of 5 stories and has an underground parking garage as well, which is accessed off Kent Street here. We do have a doorway on Kent Street, but we are downplaying that a little bit, and I can get into that later, and really have set up a major entry in a courtyard that both buildings share across the courtyard into a lobby and a number of amenity spaces, and then up into the building. So this actually makes a lot of sense when you kind of walk the site and you see how this has a much more of a landscape setting, and it would be much more pleasant as a place to enter the site than to be coming in directly off Kent Street. So we're excited about that. We also have asked our landscape architect, who can speak a little more on this subject, to give us some guidance on tree plantings, and they do surround the perimeter of our site on 3 sides. A few other things just in terms of site amenities, and then we'll get into the actual building design image, is we have some common area patios in the back, and they're completely surrounded by foliage to reduce sound and privacy, and to retain privacy for our Linden Street neighbors who are back in this neighborhood here. The building on the interior does have a little bit of the design worked out in order to make sure that we're addressing, the kind of the infrastructure issues correctly. We do have a trash and recycling room that has a trash chute that comes down from all the floors. This trash and recycling has a platform lift that takes it out to the street at the point of time. And we also have quite a bit of bike parking in the basement. I'll take you down there now. The basement has parking for 22 cars, and then the whole front of the building is primarily utilities and bike parking. So there's 88 bike parking spaces for 79 units. And that includes 5 cargo spaces and we will have a space for bike workshop and charging of batteries that would be fire protected. We have a little bit of, we have the usual kind of thing like elevators to take you upstairs and 2 stairways and so forth. The rest of the building is laid out in a kind of a conventional way with a double loaded corridor, and then our studios and 1 bedrooms laid off that. There are some larger units as well that we can we'll go into, at some point and actually design them. But based on their size, we believe we have mostly studios and one bedrooms. And then getting to the top level, we have a common roof deck, which we pull back quite a ways from the neighbors so that it is not, a nuisance at all. And it's limited in size to about 700 square feet. Key thing here is the section of the whole site. So this is a section that is showing you on the left-hand side is Kent Street. You see the ramp down to the basement that I mentioned, and the right-hand side is the rear property line leading to the Linden Street neighbors. So under the T5 buffer zone, we're required to have a construction plane that pulls buildings back. Plus we have a minimum 30-foot setback, followed by a 50-foot minimum setback. Now, in our case, we did adhere to the 30-foot setback. But then we increased it to 52 feet for the 4th floor. And at the 5th floor, we, at the suggestion of the DAT and others, we stepped it back 1 notch further to 63 feet. And you can see the buffer zone plane is adhered to and improved in this setting. So what does this building look like? Before I go into that, the flex section, get this to show up. Hang on a sec. There we go. It's having a little trouble. Okay, so this is a 3D aerial view of the whole site, as seen from over Webster Street, which is in the curved street here. And you're looking at our neighbors left and right. And this is the rotated and moved 40 Kent Street building. I did mention that we're designing with Verdant a common plaza for the 2 buildings. And part of our scheme involves short-term bicycle parking under a canopy, and then a glass entry into the lobby space itself. So while these buildings are contemporary and traditional, they're both looking out into through a canopy with columns out into a nice setting out there for trees and landscaping to be developed, and Katya can speak about that a little bit. Another view, a little more aerial. You can see the backyard common area that we talked about, and the roof deck is showing up here. We've simulated what we think would be the mechanical systems. Of course, that could change a little bit, but in any case, if there's quite a bit of roof area up there for these mechanical systems. This is a view overlooking the Linden Street neighbors who are down at the bottom of the picture. And you can see how this steps back once, twice. It creates 3 different planes. The first one does have a green space of about 10 feet before it gets to a private patio. So we think that the activities of this this private patio will really not be seen by the Linden Street neighbors, and I'll show you that view of that in a minute from the street. This is a walkway that we have here in a little play area. We've kept all the landscaping off here so you can see the buildings. Another view overlooking the parking lot that is behind the adjoining buildings. You're seeing here the side which has the ramp at the ground level as well. And again, you can see the step back and how all that works. A front view, we'll go into this in a little bit about the materials that we're using, but we do echo the kind of brick materials here, and we do create an entry down here at the ground level. Actually, this kind of recessed entry is exactly what the buildings on the opposite side of the street have, with a kind of surround on the doorways on the shadow box effect. And this is the area over here where we have our doors that open up from the trash room when needed. Kind of a closer view of the same thing. You can see we projected forward an area of the building to set up the facade in a way that is contextual with the other buildings on the street. One more view of that. Again, with landscaping, this will take on a little more texture and layering. At the corner, we did a double a recess in here so that the corner actually unfolds as you come around, leaving this kind of recessed square cut out here, and then another one a little further on. So from a contextual point of view, we're trying to, use the brick along Kent Street, which is heavy on brick. And then as we turn, we just keep the brick at the low level. And then up above, we have, we're proposing to use synthetic stucco on all of this material up in here, all the surface up here. Another view at street eye level of the two entries into the buildings. A close-up of the proposed new entry. As I mentioned, there's space there for short-term bike storage, as well as the entry to the lobby. And these windows over here are for a little living room that is a common area as well. A view down Webster Street. As you come down, the view is front and center. And then you turn the corner and you're into a different kind of environment, especially with the landscaping you'll see in a minute. Now, I do have some views from the Linden Street neighbors, and we were showing these to the DAT the other night. This is a view from 31 Linden from the second floor. We showed the second floor because at the ground level, you might not see much with the fences that are here. So anyways, you can see the stepping up here. You can really have very little sense of, that size of that patio up there. And this is the back of the building, the 40 Kent Street building, with its beautiful windows. Another view here. And I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I think most of the Linden Street neighbors were quite happy with how this is turning out, and how much space they had between their buildings, their yards, and the new building. So the section seems to be working. And when you see the layering of the landscape in here, I think it works particularly well. So this is 33 Linden, second floor. And then we go to actual ground view. There's a space between two buildings, 43 and 33, where you can see the building over a garage that's there. And it's quite a ways away when you look at it this way. Finally, this is the view from the parking lot at that long side that I mentioned. We have broken up that side. This cornice, both here and in the front, plays a role to try to help establish some scale to the building and separate the different materials. On the back of this building, we would use a lap siding, somewhat similar to what is on the 40 Kent Street building. And then above that, we would go to the stucco that I mentioned before. So I think it'd be good just spend a second on the elevations, and then I'll pass it on to Katya. And so these are just the 2D elevations that you've seen already in 3D, but they're a little more rendered. The 3D renderings, I should have just mentioned, those are they're not highly rendered, so they're kind of more just like right off the press to give you an idea of massing and scale. Our front view with the contextual street view as well. So you see the building at, I'm not sure the number of it, to the right, that has its rounded bay. And then we project forward with our, not really a bay, it's a piece of the building. And there's a small balcony up above with a nice wooden railing to detail that. The long view that I mentioned before with the ramp and its gallery windows. And then in the rear. The rear is difficult to draw because everything is skewed except for 3 small planes, and that's this one, that one, and that one. So all these other planes here you've seen in other images. Why don't I pass this on now to Katya Posadlo, who will take us through the landscape plan. That's okay. Katya?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Peter. And thank you all for taking time to review this with us. I'm Katya Posadlo with Verdant Landscape Architecture. Nice to see many of you again. The primary goals for this landscape plan are to, number one, of course, support the new residential living on this site, but also to develop and enhance the buffers and the screening to the neighbors, as well as, just throughout design a really robust planting plan that will support biodiversity as much as we can, as well as be, very attractive and ornamental, which can very easily go together. So this plan highlights the proposed planting. The teal green circles kind of on the left side of the site over there towards the north represent the trees that we'll be protecting and will remain. And these are fairly tall trees and will provide some really good scale and context for the new building. The lighter green circles around the rest of the perimeter represent 11 new shade trees that we're proposing that will provide interesting and seasonal interest with their different colored leaves and tree shapes, because there's a wide variety in our plant list, you'll see. You can also see in the photos along the bottom a wide variety of colors and forms of shrubs and perennials that we're proposing, many of which are native, including species like shrubby cinquefoil, viburnum, inkberry, summersweet. Also notable on the planting plan on the top side of the page is an evergreen hedge, a very tall emerald green arborvitae hedge along with a fence line. That's the east edge of our site, which, in addition to that fence, those evergreens will provide a really nice green buffer in between our new building and the existing residence on Linden and Eastwood on Kent at those parking lots that are just to the top of the page there. You go to the next page, please. Thank you. This is our hardscape plan. Thank you. I'll start with the image on the far right showing a 6-foot height fence, which is what we're proposing around the rear and most of the side property lines. Although we're proposing to step down to a 4-foot height fence where the side yard property lines get towards the front of the property, because we have, our driveway on Kent Street and we want to have good sight lines. And the neighbors have a driveway on Webster. We want to make sure we don't impede with a tall fence. So those fences will step down. Just simple wood board fences. And then in the middle of our plan, you'll see a plaza space that's designed with decorative unit pavers as a welcoming plaza and entry to the 2 lobbies into the building, both to the right in those double doors and to the left up to the porch. And within that space, we're proposing a variety of benches, seating, and planters that will populate the area for people to gather and enjoy the entry area, maybe put their bags down while they get their keys, hang out and hang out with their neighbors a little bit, wait for their ride, get dropped off, and etc. In front of that plaza area, you'll notice that we're creating a bit of a drop-off zone. This is sort of schematic, needs to be vetted out with DPW to make sure it's the turning radii work. But our proposal is to provide some sort of a temporary parking zone for pickup, drop-off, loading, maybe move in, move out, that kind of thing, because most visitors won't be, using the garage, which is on the other corner of the site there. Back to the residential experience. In addition to this plaza, which is really more of a transitional entry area, and by the way, I should mention that we would normally plant more trees, more larger trees in this front space, but because this is most likely where we're designating the infiltration chambers to be located below, we can't plant large trees. So instead, this plaza space creates really good opportunity for the circulation. In any case, the residential experience, we have 2 other primary shared patio spaces, one at the rear of the property on the north end here. You can see this at-grade patio, but later on I'll show you another common area up on the roof deck. So here you can see this shared patio utilized for potentially barbecuing, outdoor dining, also small living room, outdoor lounging kind of situation. And because large portion of that, about 2/3 of that patio and the space adjacent to it is above the garage, the landscape won't be able to support huge trees close to the buildings. Instead, it's more conducive to smaller shrubs, medium-sized shrubs, although there's a good volume of soil between this elevation and the top of the garage structure below. We thought, well, let's incorporate a lawn space here too for some flexible lawn area. So that's what we've done on the bottom, I guess that's western edge of the rear yard. But that garage wall is actually 15 feet away from the rear property line. So we have a good opportunity to save these 2 trees, as well as plant more trees around the edges and support their root systems to grow large. So we have other larger shrubs along those edges as well to create nice green surroundings to the rear yard. If you could move to the right side of the page, just want to point out the secondary doorway and the facade and the space along Kent Street. This space, because of the stepped and the overhang of the building above, is it 3 feet, Peter?
Yeah.
I don't recall exactly. We have a slightly smaller tree located where that overhang will exist, and a slightly larger tree where the overhang does not exist. So we're able to accommodate a slightly larger canopy. Originally, we had a very symmetrical situation with 2 skinny trees, but the facade changed. It's not symmetrical anymore because the building facade is not symmetrical. And we've incorporated a linden tree at the top corner next to the garage ramp entry in homage to the Linden Street nearby. Yeah, that one. But you can see there's a generous lawn and just in general shrub and tree landscape out in front as a yard space that provided a comfortable walking situation for people walking by and buffer to the units at that level. If we could go to the next page. Peter mentioned this, but as the building steps back, there are opportunities for green roof. This is above the garage ramp down at that roof level. We're providing a sedum sod carpet on top of the roof, so neighbors to our east could have a view of the sedum, help absorb a little bit of water, stormwater. Next slide, up to the 4th level, we step back on the north end and have there we are, some opportunity for roof deck plantings at that outer edge, buffering the 2 private patios. So the vantage from the neighbors is quite set back and not visible really. And next level up, another couple of private decks, as Peter had mentioned and shown in those elevations really nicely. Those are private units with a fence in between, some sort of privacy fence. And lastly, up on the roof deck, we've reserved the majority of this space for mechanical equipment to be determined. The central space in between the elevator head house and stairwell would be another opportunity for fresh air, sunshine, barbecue, and more lounge space. And that's what I wanted to share for the moment. These are sort of semi-preliminary. There's a few things we're going to catch up on, including studying last year when we visited the site and looked at all the trees and reviewed all the trees. To know that the 2 trees that we're proposing to save in the back, one is a cork tree, it's quite large, and the other one is, I believe, a sycamore maple that's maybe struggling, and one of the neighbors pointed out it might not be in the best of health. So we're gonna go review that and make sure that it's a tree worth saving and can be saved. We will see. So I haven't gotten back since last week when our abutter pointed that out. So thank you for that information. We will get back to you on that. So we have developed some elevations and included conceptual ideas of what the trees will look like after maybe 10 years or 15 years of growth, and gesture towards what the shrubs are intended to do. So you see some oak trees, and I think these are sweet gum trees, perhaps.
Yeah.
I believe is what I did
Yep.
For the 3 in the middle along the streetscape. This is a view from like Webster Place looking straight on. And on the other elevations, these are the back of the, oh no, this is the front, the asymmetrical planting. So on the far right would be the linden tree. On the far left would be I think a white oak tree. I think I have a street keeper honey locust to the left, and a hornbeam on the right in the middle. And then on the next page, you see a gesture towards the idea for these tall emerald green arborvitae, which would actually be, like, of course, behind a fence line, but without the fence, this is what you would see. And finally, do we have another one at the back? That's right. So the two larger trees in this view represent the two trees we're proposing to save, infilling those with additional trees. So the one in the middle would be an American elm. Thank you. I'm happy to try to answer some questions or pass it back to Peter for additional information if he has more to share.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Katya. You want to just mention the materials on the building. As I mentioned, we're a combination of stucco in the upper white areas, off-white, and then lap siding in the vicinity of 40 Kent Street, and then some fiber cement panels that are intended to be between the windows in locations around the building. In the front, where we have the brick, we're trying to work with two different brick tones. One, a kind of soft gray, which is our primary brick, and then a darker ebonite, it's called ebonite brick, to highlight, you know, the special places around doorways and windows and that. So that's about it. You know, the existing building will certainly undergo some more examination before we know how we're going to deal with the exterior on that one.
Neither you or Attorney Allen mentioned, I think you're still at, you went up to 70 units. Is that still where you're at?
Let me see here. It is 79.
39, thank you.
In the same building volume that we've been showing, you know, moving the volume around, but it's always been FAR 2.5.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Not sure who's in charge. What does the tree say?
Oh, I should just mention that we did have commercial space on this, which
I was going to ask about that.
yeah, ostensibly is a requirement under, you know, the zoning district. But to the encouragement of many people, we eliminated that for the time being, and we'll seek relief, you know, the ZBA, and Bob can speak about that more, but I just want to mention that we converted those ground floor area into units.
Bob, would this require a variance? I know that there's support for this, is just for the record.
It would, for that commercial space, it would.
Okay, so we should, so the planning board should comment about that in our discussions.
Would be appreciated.
Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier.
No, that's fine. That was a very good and informative presentation. Thank you. And I'd like to start with hearing from the planning board. I know that we sort of upset the apple cart a bit the last time this was presented with our strong views about maintaining the location of the historic Victorian house on the corner. And I think we gave lots of reasons for this. I think that the presentation was very well done. Clearly, it's has focused a lot on the impact on the neighbors on Linden Street. So members of the board, do you have any comments you'd like to share here?
Can I start?
Please.
I looked at the May 20th options to try to relocate the house on Kent Street, and I agree that this is a better location. But I really appreciate the effort to add, you know, changes in the mass on the long wall to the, I guess it's the east elevation, and playing with that, breaking that facade up. but I'm still concerned about those 2 to 3 units that are at the end of the building where there are windows, not at the very end, but all along the east side, yes. I'm concerned that, you know, their primary windows are so close to the setback and potentially looking at, you know, we don't know what's going to happen there in the future. So I was wondering if you had looked at or could consider, if you could zoom out, moving the historic house is, I think it was around 9 feet setback. If you could move that a
Yeah.
little bit down and then maybe move the 15 feet passageway, move everything down, shift it down, or try to just get 2 or 3 feet more on that last yellow.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So
all
like
the way
sort of create like take this little box here as a knot, you know, as a little trapezoidal shape and shift everything
Yeah,
this way.
yeah.
And you're suggesting that, Andrea, rather than shifting the entire building.
Well, I thought
You're
about
just-
that too, but when I looked at the 3D views that they presented,
Mhm.
it seemed like you needed that space, but I think it's,
Mhm.
you know, all ideas would be welcome.
Yeah, we certainly can take a look at that.
Okay. Andrea, other comments, or, I mean, that's a very thoughtful one. Anything else you want to add?
I was just, I don't want to dwell on it because it's not thought out yet, but that proposed parking curb, just wondering how that would work with traffic. But that's being developed, so I don't think we need to dwell on that. That's all I have. That was just the big change I would like to see studied, if possible.
Other members of the board, Linda, Marks, Tommy?
Well, I can speak, you know, with this having to get a variance to remove the commercial space, you know, I think that is a great idea to remove that commercial space and add those units. I think that's really great for Brookline Village. I know a lot of the business owners in Brookline Village have talked about wanting to get more foot traffic, and I think this development could do a lot to bring a lot of foot traffic business to some of those great places that are along Harvard there that sometimes do struggle to get people walking in the door. So just put that on the record.
I have a few thoughts. I was one of the members of the planning board that favored sticking with the original scheme of keeping the Elks building where it was, both because of its setting with some mature landscaping around it. And also, I sort of assumed that it was a big ask to have the developer pick the building up and move it. But first, having heard the developer is okay with doing that, and I've gotten my head around the fact that the building in its proposed location really forms a nice kind of a pair with the existing historic structure at 30 Webster. Is it 30? Yeah, at 30 Webster, which is kind of a brick clone of the BCF building that would be demolished for this. And I think the two of them work well together with the porticos of the two buildings kind of lining up. As long as we're on the topic of that building, I think removing that one-story addition really makes a lot of sense. And I know that you've also replaced the very small dormers on the two sides of the roof with a much larger dormer to make that third floor more livable. I don't know why you wouldn't add dormers on the other sides, the front side, as we're looking at it now, and the back, to make even more livable space. I don't know what the Preservation Commission would say about that, but I
Or at
think,
least the back.
well, you know, I've been up in that space, and it's, you know, it's a pretty low slope in that hip roof, and I don't think, I'd leave that to the Preservation Commission, but I don't think that they would have a problem with adding more dormers. Maybe not quite as big as the ones you've got on the sides, but something of that scale, I think would make that top floor unit a lot more livable. a couple of other comments. I've attended the last couple of DAT meetings, and I certainly concur with the problems that folks had with the symmetrical front and how that didn't seem to work with the rest of the building. I think what you've done now is a big improvement. I wonder whether those terraces at the top floor, which I think would be great, near as I can tell, they're awfully narrow. I don't know if they can be made a little bit more usable than what they seem to be from the drawings. And just one other thought. This is really more of a programmatic suggestion than a design suggestion. But with this many small units, I see that there's a fair amount of amenity space on the ground floor. And I've got my Housing Advisory Board hat on. I know with 79 units, this project would require 12 affordable units. I think even from the point of view of the Housing Advisory Board, with this many small, naturally occurring affordable units, all these studios and one bedrooms, which we have not had many proposed in Brookline for years, I would suggest the developer consider getting 3 of these ground floor units out and replacing them with more amenity space. That would also reduce the number of required affordable units from 12 to 11. And I don't know what the financial impact of that. I know affordable units are a financial drain. One less affordable unit, but and you would have 76, 70, well, the market units would be the rest, but 3 less units and a bit more amenity space, which with all these small units, I think that would make this building more marketable. Just a thought.
Could I just interject? I think one thing I wanted to add, thank you for that, Steve. I just wanted either Katya or Peter to speak about the amount of open space outside of the building, because I understand that you strove to meet the requirements for open space just on the ground floor, not including the terraces. Do you roughly know how many square feet of open space you have?
I'm not sure about the square feet, but I know that we meet the minimum requirement for open space all on the ground. We don't need to use any roof decks or balconies or roof green roofs or anything like that to get that to work.
I think that's terrific. I'm just thinking that maybe more year-round amenity space might be a marketable idea.
Yeah.
I also Peter, in terms of the elevations, I really like the way you've paired the windows on the top 4 floors into larger groupings instead of having just repeated individual punched windows. I think that's a very attractive feature and gives this building a nice sense of scale. So that I think is a nice kind of use of material. I think, one other minor thing, that little drop-off space that you have in the curve, I'm sure that Ubers and Lyfts can stop there without any problem. I would suggest making the loading space, just move it forward along the right there, the straight section of the curb. The Webster Place is a little bit wider there, and you wouldn't have something, any large vehicles parked right where vehicles are coming around the corner. That would be my thought. I mean, let the transportation department decide what would work better, but I would move that forward just a bit.
If I may, through the chair, we are in conversation with traffic and engineering about that and trying to figure out how to best lay this out. So, presumably by the time we come back with a full application, we'll have that straightened out.
So,
Right.
Those are my comments. So I've come around to this. I'm quite happy with the way this is going.
Can I make a comment?
Please, Mark.
Okay, I think that a lot of work has been done, and I think that it's a very good job. It looks good. I have just one question, and the question relates to if you're going to need a variance for no commercial space, but where would the commercial space be? Where would you locate it if you had to put it in?
Yes, through the chair, if we had it actually is required to be a percentage of the facades facing the street. So it would have to, that percentage, I believe it's 60%, would have to start, counting it from a line that comes off this street edge and then wraps around. That's one part of the equation. And then there's another part along Kent Street.
So it sounds like
Yeah,
you're counting on a variance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if we, if there were no residences here and this was all commercial, I believe we would meet the requirement. I think that's how it was laid out before.
Mark, this did come up at a couple, I think 2 different DAT meetings where the DAT would be willing to go on record as supporting that more housing units versus the commercial space, to the point that Tommy made. We sort of would love to sort of count the Brookline Village itself as the amenity for these residents and try to get them to use those businesses. And we had a number of neighbors who also said that they would be willing to write letters of support too. So when it gets to the point of asking for that variance, if we have the support of the planning board, the independent support of the DAT, and the aggregate support of the neighbors, I think that would really help this applicant.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
make a
agree-
point
I agree
before,
with
could I
that.
just add something
Yeah,
to the variance issue? Blair?
Go
Uh,
ahead.
There is a specific condition in the zoning bylaw under section 9.09, conditions for approval of a use variance. And one of them is existence on the lot in question of a structure of, historical or architectural significance, which shall be preserved. So by preserving the Elks Building, I think they're entitled to ask for use variance under section 9.091D. It's right there.
Thank you, Steve.
There's to not have to have that commercial space.
Mark, did you have any further comment?
No, I no, I don't. I just was asking the question because I was just wondering how that would lay out. But I understand it now, and I think I support a variance for this.
Okay. Any other members of the board for comments?
I'll say a couple things. I think the view toward Linden Street is very successful. I think that's actually the best view of the property. And I think that goes very well. I think facing south, the patio there in front is a scorcher. I wish there was some sort of, doesn't have to be a tree, but pergola or something. It just, on these days, like yesterday, day before rather, it's not a pleasant place. I think, the DAT also had problems with the Kent Street elevation, and I know it's been manipulated some. If we could go to that, but I'm not satisfied with it myself. It's like so many of these new buildings when you've got, this number of stories that you sort of pretend that the top is going away by making it a lighter color. So it's like always like, oh, we reduce the mass that way. I'm tired of the argument. I want it to be friendlier to the street, because I think we've taken away something that really helped that neighborhood. This is pretty much, a flat facade, very close to the sidewalk that, could have a better spirit to it. I mean, it's very gray, the building's gray, the other building's gray. We talked about maybe adding paint color to the historically preserved structure. That would help. But in the effort not to offend anybody, it's just sort of coming off as blah. There's just sort of more spirit of place to it. We've replaced that corner, we've moved it back. I think it works, well with the neighbors, fabulous. But for all the people and all the traffic coming down here, it's just not, to me, we haven't replaced that structure with something that I would want to look at.
Linda, just to ask for a little bit. Are you thinking about more detail in how the brick is handled?
I'm not gonna be the architect for this.
Right.
but,
No, I was just
you know,
thinking
it's
more
a very-
generally.
They're right up to the sidewalk. They've given so what is it now? 4 feet, 8 feet? What's the setback? 8 feet? You know, but now we're putting, you know, the decoration now is bushes. And I don't think this plan necessarily reflects what we're seeing in elevation either. This is not showing the inset to the door and how that might affect this plan. But you know, I don't know whether the brick changes in some treated as a fabric or instead of just a straight brick. I'm not going to solve it, but I do think we've created the situation where I think we need to pay more attention to the, you know, there's cars, there's a one-way street. We don't look at the historic building anymore, but this is what we see. And I think it's got to have more play to it instead of just this. We're going to do 4 stories. It's going to be one nice color, and the top floor is going to be, it's going to disappear because it's a lighter color, and it's just, we see it over and over and over again. And I don't think we have to satisfy, you know, do that. I mean, there are other options. I mean, Lordy, architecture is a rich field here. So that would be, that's what I feel like. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Linda. Any other comments from members of the board?
This is good. Peter, would you mind putting your newer 3D views of the Kent Street elevation back up, or elevation, but the street level views? Those, yeah. Those weren't in the package. So it's the first time having a chance to kind of look at those.
I mean, it's kind of a fake door now because it's really not meant as a main entry. So, you know, it's created this, you know, where you've solved it on the other side with the courtyard as the entry point. But this is, you know, the main street actually. And the other one is probably will become one way or the other way.
Right. I think that's a good challenge to put out there, Linda. Thank you. Matt or or Tommy, any further comments from you or Andrea?
I have a question about whether this door is necessary by code. Do you need a door at this end of the corridor?
You actually don't.
You know, just to go further on my thought about replacing some of these units with more amenity space. If these were amenity spaces, at least some of them, one or both of those units facing Kent Street, first of all, you don't need the door there. You could have a different kind of look to that ground floor, more transparent like you have around the plaza and the other common spaces on the ground floor. Something I don't see in this building that you see in a lot of similar buildings with a lot of small units. There's often a kind of a common place to sort of a bar or kitchen kind of area, a sort of large table that people can sit around and eat or share a meal.
Or a work area.
Yeah, well, there I see a few possible workstations, but I think this building programmatically, I think could use more and would benefit from it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have been the one who was pushing for that other door because I was really hoping not to have as much car traffic on Webster Place and try to get the pin for Uber and Lyft to be on Kent. But it sounds like the transportation board is willing to look at a one-way Webster that might eliminate some of that traffic concern. So I'd be willing, Peter, if you are, to go back to, I think you had a thought about the second means of egress could be through the stairwell, which already has a door out to grade down a half flight. So that corridor would have another means of egress, and that would, to the point that Steve just made, if you would like to think about whether that would give you a different opportunity with the elevation or facade on that level. That's less of a concern, at least for me now, than it was a while back.
Okay.
You could also then, I think, eliminate that extra lift as well, because you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You'd have an accessible means of you only need one accessible, right? Two means of egress, only one has to be accessible, so you have it at the other end.
Right.
Give you
And
back a little more space.
The second exit is out through the stairway.
Yeah, yeah. If you were to add an additional amenities, just I'd be curious, because my office does a lot of multifamily housing, and I tend to think those don't get used. They're great on the brochure, but is there a space that you feel is missing that you just couldn't accommodate programmatically that you had at one point, but squeezed it back out? And would it fit in the Unit 101 footprint, or at least the 101 location?
It's possible. This is really at the direction of our client, what they think they need for, for a successful building.
Yeah, which is why I raised the idea of if you eliminated 3 units, total 76, you would eliminate one of the affordable units you're required to have.
Okay.
Does that work economically? I don't know.
I mean, my office does a lot of multifamily too, and I have to say the large function rooms are pretty active and popular. Dog washing station, there's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking which of those might want to be visible to Kent Street, to Steve's point, if you were to glass front it and to this point, really activate the sidewalk with some kind of tenant activity space, what would it be?
Party room with a kitchenette.
Yeah.
Publicly accessible bicycle repair stations are always cool too.
Sort of a media room, things like that.
Yeah,
Like community amenity of being the dog washing space for the whole street.
Huh.
You know?
All right. If there's no further comments, do we want to open it up to public, or do you want to just have an opinion from the planning board on the current progress here?
I see a lot of neighbors who've been following along the DAT hearings. I think it'd be nice to give them an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Charles Osborne, who is a member of the DAT, is also here. So he's actually seeing some of the revisions for the first time tonight. So perhaps go to him next. Hi, Charles.
Sure. Okay.
Good evening. Charles Osborne, Precinct 6, live on Davis Ave. I think the first comment is, and I really don't, the night seems to be going, in a really positive direction. Of course, the Kent Street facade is a challenge, and I think Linda's, keeping everybody on it, keeping eyes on it. But I think above all, the major thing is that that the development legal design team I was worried when this project started. I said, oh God, are we just going to try to tweak this, with some compromises? And I think that the approach has been super constructive, and that there have been some real changes made in the building, and I think huge improvements in the course of the 5 meetings and all the work that Quinn Architects have done. And I think one thing that happened is that I think they started to strip out any of the superfluous moves, and they simplified things, and it made it easier once we bought into moving the Elks building but I think that the building, I'll try to keep the comments brief. The building is to me, it's a building that really works, and it really has responded to the neighborhood, and I think it's really contextual. And I made a comment about, I thought that the elevation that we're looking at was lyrical, and that's kind of a poetic thing. But I think if you look at that elevation, you go from Kent Street and then you start to turn the corner, and actually the 3D is better, I think, just if we can stay on this. But if you look, like Steve Hyken was talking about, pairing the windows, that the that elevation has movement of, you know, one plane that's, you know, that's really parallel, and then that plane gets, you know, another plane that turns and gets even broken, so it's not just pure repetition. And then the building starts to step down, you know, to the scale of the Elks building and the neighborhood and that beautiful brick building next to the Elks building. Yeah, I almost feel it's like really pretty masterful, you know, what the design team has done. And you know, the sky exposure plane is, you know, at work, you know, in the neighborhood with the stepping down. And I think that the building, which really has quite a bit of girth, really does elongate it, and you see that better in plan than you do maybe and certain other views. But and I think that it really, you know, it genuinely, you know, with the plaza, the courtyard, whatever you want to call it, that was nothing in many of the earlier schemes. You know, it was like, you know, hey, what's going on there? You know, it wasn't even really maybe anything more than a back door, you know, or a little utility shed was there. And that became, you know, where this place really, you know, Linda used the word place. You know, that's really where I think the building really joins the community and the neighborhood, the community of the village, the neighborhood of Linden Street and Kent Street, and with that patio. So and you know, Steve was also talking about the plan and, you know, the lobby, and, you know, there's an inside outside connection. So, you know, I think that it's a very strong plan, and I think that the massing has been really worked on, and it's quite successful. That's my comment. So it's a kind of a congratulations to the team.
Thanks, Charles. Becca or Maria, do you have other people who want to speak?
I just want to point out that Melinda Mann is also a member of the design advisory team, and she is a representative of the neighborhood. So I just want to make sure she, if she has any comments, she's been very helpful throughout the process.
Oh, thank you, Maria. So I never, you know, when this all began last August, people were really upset because of the size and the way it abutted the Linden Street area. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that it would, this project would turn around the way it did. And I think in terms of the 40 Kent Street building being moved, I actually think it showcases the architecture of that building much better where it is now than plunked on the corner. It's really the focal point of the curve of the street, and it really, as Charles said, really ties in the new building with the old building and the neighborhood behind it. So I thank Peter and the other people on the DAT. I've learned a lot through this whole process. I've learned things about town government that I never really knew, and maybe I'm not sure I wanted to know them, but it's really been an interesting and very gratifying experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the public who would wish to speak?
If you wish to speak, if you could go to the reactions button in the ribbon below or at the top, and to just look for the hand, raise the hand button, or even in the chat, I will find you. Okay. I don't see anyone, Blair, so
right, well,
I think we will just turn it over to the board.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to say that overall the comments from the board have been very positive. As someone who was reluctant to see the Elks building moved, I'm convinced that this was a better choice than keeping it where it was because of reducing the impact on the neighbors on Linden. And I certainly concur with Charles's comment about how the building has been really nicely manipulated. I think it strikes me that a couple of other important statements. Linda has some concerns about the plainness along Kent Street, so presumably that might get a little bit of tweaking. And you've gotten a suggestion from Steve regarding the number of affordable units and whether you might want to reconsider how that's done. Landscape plan, I thought was very nicely presented. I think the only comment that was important that Linda had made was the fact that that plaza is going to be a bit hot in the weather we had earlier this week. And in terms of the amount and location of stormwater storage, I guess that's something the team can consider about where, with the civil engineer about where the best place for those, which is what is going to be a large amount of capacity that needs to be found.
And Andrea's comment about windows to unit 110, just looking at how you might
just get a little more relief along the east elevation for those back units.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry.
We got that.
I'm sorry to have neglected that, Andrea. Thank you for reminding me. With that in mind, those comments, and congratulations to the design team. I think we've all been pleased with this as a whole. I'd like to ask the board to whether we are in support of a variance to eliminate the requirement for commercial space. I think Steve had come up with a specific reference in terms of our zoning code, and I think it was Tommy who had made comments about supporting the existing commercial businesses along Harvard Street, and that whether there really is a need for additional commercial space in this location. With that in mind, I'm going to make a motion to support a variance to eliminate the requirement for commercial space in this development. Do I have a second?
Second.
Keep in mind that this is just a preliminary presentation. We haven't even applied yet to the board.
I see. All right.
Coming back to you. You don't have to.
No, okay, we don't need to do that.
I think, Blair, what we want to do is you want to get a sense that the big moves. So remember, there was a charge where you wanted the DAT to focus on certain problems. So we just want to get kind of an okay that the site configuration, the site plan, and the overall volume is really stabilized, so they can go on to an application.
How many more meetings are there left for the group? Like, where are you in this process?
So what I'm thinking here is that if we can just give some assurance to the project team that this is pretty stable, I think with the list of things that you've given, they can probably incorporate that in their application. And then what we can look at is just a report to the ZBA. Remember, the ZBA has to weigh in on the amount of bonus that they're going to get. This is a public benefits incentive ask. So that's the big piece here. So there does need to be a report from not just the Preservation Commission, but also on the planning board, and the DAT can be combined with that. It can be a subset of that, the planning board report. But that I'd like to see that happen when there's a traffic impact study done. Just so that we can hear from the transportation division. I don't think that's at all going to affect the site plan and the ground floor, the lobby, or anything like that. I just think that there might be some mitigation that the project team needs to factor in.
I think the board, I think
down the road before it goes to the ZBA, right? This was only a preliminary presentation.
Yeah. So again, I think what I think I'd like you to give to the DAT and to the project team, just this list, and is it okay for them to keep this basic configuration in their application? So basically, your sense that the big moves are done, and then once they submit the application, there would be a planning board hearing, and then also a ZBA hearing, so that you could comment on the report to the ZBA.
It sounds to me that we've been pretty positive about this, Maria. Just that, do we need to underline that further than what we've already said in public comment?
I think that sounds fine to me. So I'll just take
Okay.
that as a general agreement of the
Um,
board that you're okay with this.
I haven't heard any disagreements with what's happening, but and very many positives. So I thought we were on board with this decision to relocate the building and to have the step backs. I think there were some. I think the comments that were made were would not affect the overall direction that the design team has established. It was more in some, minor tweaks and embellishments, and which I think at some point the owner and the design team needs to just make their decision in terms of what they think is best. And I think the planning board has been, I think, very positive here tonight.
I think it's been great, and I thank the planning board, and I think, listen, every time we've got tweaks from whether the DAT or the neighborhood or the planning board, the project's got better. So I'm sure what we heard tonight, next time we come before you, the project's going to be better.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to stop you from taking a vote tonight, Blair, but
Well, I think the vote. I think that
it was great to hear positive comments. They
Right.
did a lot
Well-
of work. Peter deserves a lot of credit.
I totally agree, and I think that I just wanted to go on whether it would be helpful, Maria, to be on record that the planning board would support a variance here. I think that's a pretty.
You could do a show of hands.
Yeah, I think that would be fairly substantial. That's a very substantial programmatic element here. So I think that we should, as Mark had just suggested, have a show of hands, which maybe I'll do it this way. Is anyone opposed to supporting the variance? I don't think we are. So I think that we're all in support of that being an important concession to the project's success.
Thank you for all the time tonight.
Thank
Okay.
you all.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you for the excellent work, Peter, and your team.
Yeah, and kudos
you.
to Matt and the
Yeah,
DAT.
here.
for-
And,
Oh,
and
yes,
Claudia and her team, with there no comments on the landscaping again, which
Amazing.
Peter
Quite
made
a
it
love
easy.
fest we have here tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Good
Right.